Greetings, fans, and welcome to the inaugural reading from Black Metal Dad, a journey into the dark underbelly of Parenthood. My name is Milord Chuck. A bit of background to what I'm about to read to you. My wife Karen has recently fallen pregnant to my soon-to-be-born son Boris, and she feels the need to buy a brand new cot. I already own a cot. It was my cot and my father's before mine. I recruited my grandparents to help in convincing this woman that my option is the best option. I shall begin. I met Karen and she was instantly besotted with me. Unsurprisingly, we were wed, and a few years later, my new jailer, not satisfied with just being a stepmother, wanted to have a baby of her own. It was not as enlightened as I am now, so I foolishly agreed. After all, it involved dancing the dance of love, of which I am a big fan. It didn't help that our families were pushing us to have a child either. The bastards should have worried about their own backyards and kept their noses out of mine. At any rate, my off-the-chart sperm count meant it wasn't long before I'd fertilised the egg that would develop into my child. Days became weeks, which became months, and Karen grew and grew. It was like watching stop-motion footage of a startled pufferfish. Eventually, her thoughts turned to our child's sleeping arrangements and the need to waste money. We urgently had to have that talk, but this time, to my surprise, my grandparents took care of it themselves. I didn't have to say or do a thing. Once again, we're at my grandparents' place, enjoying another Sunday lunch. By now, Bubba and Didchuk had dropped their charade and openly spoke to Karen in English. For some reason, they loved this woman, as opposed to the disdain they held Screech, my ex-wife, in. I think it was because she was an actual human and not a fork-tongued sport of the pit. So my lord and I have been looking at cots, Karen started to say as we gorged ourselves. Darling, Baba Chook interrupted. Don't be silly. We have one already. My lord and his father both slept on it. Helga as well. But it's so old, Baba. I want a new cot for this baby, my wife continued. Didchuk looked up from his glass. Yes, he's old, but he's strong, he booed. His English wasn't as fluent as my grandmother's, so he spoke like a stereotypical Russian movie villain. And your baby not be broken. Karen looked confused by this. Her face took on a blank expression, like a dress mannequin. What Did means is that it is tradition for the children of the elder son to sleep in the cot of their father. To go against this was to bring down the wrath of the old witch, my grandmother had declared. Baba had outdone herself. She had gone from the simple story we used on Screech to invoking a dark horror from Slavic myth. Baba Yaga, a monster that fed on children. This evil bitch was a source of absolute terror from my childhood, so I was curious to see where my grandmother was going with this. I poured myself a glass of Didchuk's finest and settled in for the show. Who? Karen asked. Yoi, 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 Baba cried out. This was the traditional way for a Slavic woman to start any conversation of such gravitas. Baba Yaga, an evil witch that hungers for the flesh of young children, a bride of the devil. My grandmother proceeded to cough up a wad of phlegm and violently spat it on the ground. An act my grandfather imitated with much gusto. Baba, that's just a dumb superstition, Karen interrupted, a look of horror on her face as she stared at the blobs of saliva glistening on the otherwise spotless kitchen floor. No, Karen, no. Baba liked to make sure she got her point across, is not superstition, no. Darling, my grandfather addressed my grandmother. Tell them about your sister. He looked Karen in the eye and banged the table to emphasize his point. Sveta having baby too. She think she trick Baba Yaga. Both he and Baba Chuk spat on the floor again. Ha, yes. Sveta think tradition silly. No, listen to her husband's family. Think Baba Yaga is joke. More spit. You know what happened? Was big trouble for... Before he could finish, Didchuk was cut off by Baba. Sveta was my elder sister. A beautiful girl, like you, Karen. My wife blushed. But also, like you, she thought our traditions were silly. Well, one autumn, a few years before the war, she was married to a farmer from our village. His name was Pyotr, a handsome man. It was not long before she was with child. Baba paused her story while I poured my grandparents and myself another glass of Did's potent brew. We crashed our glasses together and downed the contents before I refilled them once more. Karen looked on in envy as she grudgingly sipped her water. She liked the drink before she got pregnant and missed the days of rolling down the road and throwing up in the back of cabs. Now Baba was a tiny woman, not even 5 feet tall, and the drink had started going to her head. She started getting more animated as she continued her tale. When our families found Pyotr and Sveta, we were going to have a baby. When our families found Pyotr and Sveta were going to have a baby, there was a big party. The whole village celebrated. Music, dancing, singing. It was so much fun. And the drinking, so much drinking. You know, my father gave me my first glass of vodka that night. Oh my God, it was like fire in my chest. But then it made me feel so good. I was the happiest 7-year-old in the world. Baba stopped talking and her eyes teared up as she remembered a night that never even happened. She was the consummate fucking professional. Respect. Karen was hanging on my grandmother's every word. Baba wiped the tears from her eyes, blew her nose and sighed. Such good times. Now where was I? That's right. Everyone was having so much fun. I remember near the end of the night, Pyotr's parents presented him and Sveta with a crib. It was very old and in need of much repair. He told the assembled crowd that this cot had been first used by Pyotr's grandfather and then by his father and finally by Pyotr himself. As he was his parents' eldest son, it was tradition that he used it for his own children. There was a murmur of approval from all the guests as this was a well-known custom. Well, from everyone but Sveta. While she thanked her in-laws for the gift and appeared grateful, I knew my sister well. Our eyes met and I knew, even at that young age, that there was no way Sveta was going to allow her firstborn to sleep in that rickety old thing. Well, a few weeks later, and there was an accident. Sveta told us all with mock sadness in her voice that while Pyotr was repairing the cot in the barn, their plough horse was spooked and broke out of its stable. In his rush to catch the beast, Sveta's husband knocked over a large pile of firewood that had been stacked for the winter. Unfortunately, this landed on top of the cot and smashed it to smithereens. We looked to Pyotr for confirmation, but all he did was nod while staring fearfully at my sister. Sveta told us that when they told his parents, Pyotr's mother began crying out the name of Baba Yaga. Puh, more spit. Baba Chuk's narration came to a halt yet again, as she and Did both hawked up some more phlegm and spat on the floor a fourth time. Not wanting to miss out on all the fun, I added a wad of my own saliva to the growing pool at our feet, much to Karen's disgust. Just like before, my grandmother continued as if nothing had happened. Pyotr ended up building a new crib and it was beautiful. He had carved baby bears and birds into the frame and it was painted a lovely bright red. She paused and began to sob gently, dabbing out her salty crocodile tears. Baba Chuk was milking it for all she was worth. Months passed and the destruction of the old cot was forgotten. The time came for Sveta to give birth and both families were so excited to welcome the new baby. Ay, Karen, this day should have been a day of such joy. But because my sister did not listen to her husband's family, her poor baby was cursed by Baba Yaga. Cue three-way synchronized spitting. The amount of drool in the linoleum was turning the floor into a wading pool. It was disgustingly marvellous. This must be the reason many houses in the Ukraine still have dirt floors. Anyway. What was wrong with the baby? My emotional wife demanded as she stroked her swollen belly. Yoy, 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 Bubba wailed. Aye, Bubba cried, tears and snot moistening her glorious moustache. Please tell me, Bubba, Karen implored, her own fragile emotions starting to get the better of her. Yoy, my darling. Sveta's poor baby was born with the feet and the face of a rat. My grandmother cried out before starting to sob uncontrollably. Didchuk took this as his cue to get in on the action and rose unsteadily to his feet, the homemade vodka going straight to his head as he stood. He began to stagger over to Bubba to offer her comfort when he slipped in a massive puddle of drool and landed flat on his back. I had to excuse myself and go to the toilet before I burst into laughter and ruined all of my grandparents' hard work. Do you see, Karen? Bubba sputtered as she composed herself. The old witch punishes us for trying to stop her curse. She pointed at my grandfather struggling to get up as he kept slipping in the copious amount of saliva coating the kitchen floor. Please, you have to use my lord's cot or your child will suffer like Sveta's. It didn't matter how fucking ludicrous the story she'd just been told was. Karen was a whirlpool of conflicting emotions. She knew it was impossible for a human child to be born with rat-like features. At the same time, she saw how impassioned Baba had become while reliving the fabricated horrors of her imaginary childhood. Seriously, my grandmother had missed her mark. She should have been a star. I returned after composing myself and looked into my darling wife's tear-streaked face and knew victory was once again mine. My lord, she sniffed. My lord. My lord, she sniffed. I've changed my mind. I don't want to upset Bubba and Did anymore. As I helped my grandfather regain his footing and eased him back into his seat, Karen poured the three of us another drink and proclaimed, okay, I didn't realise how important this cot thing is to you guys. I'm sorry, my lord. I'm sorry. My lord and I would be proud for our child to continue the family tradition. My grandparents clapped and cheered and we lucky three finished our drinks while Karen hydrated. As Bubba came over and caught my wife in a huge embrace, she winked at me from over her shoulder while I gave her the big thumbs up. The day came to an end and Karen helped me stagger to our car. She asked, so babe, are you okay with using the old cot again? I know a new one would have been good, but did you see how happy we made Bubba and Did? I fell into the passenger seat, chuckled and slurred. Shit yeah, babe, I don't want no fucking rat-faced kid. We still have that cot collecting dust in the shed, I shit you not. That's all you get for now, people. Let me know what you think. Be kind or not, I don't care. Satan loves me.